Hello everybody, my name is Dexter Kendrick and I'd like to welcome you all back to the next installment of Heavenly Body TV, your place for relevant astrological advice and also conversations on psychic phenomena. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the Dexter Kendrick Soul channel for more videos, updates, forecasts, and other amazing things coming down the pipe here in the metaphysical world. Alright, so the last week has been quite a doozy for a lot of people because Mercury just recently went retrograde in Libra. And so as I discussed, I highly recommend that everybody go check out my conversation on Mercury's retrograde in Libra. It went retrograde on September 17th, which was Thursday. And it'll be retrograde until October 9th. That has some significant things that it means for all of us regarding our communications and our technology and how things start breaking down and how everything starts slowing down and we're being obliged to move backward, to take a look at our past so we can strengthen our future. But that is that conversation. Please go check it out. I think you'll find some valuable conversations there about what it means for you. Today, we're going to have a conversation on Saturn. The planet Saturn, the ringed planet, planet of boundaries and life lessons and pain and change. It's an interesting planet, and it has recently moved into Sagittarius. And so have you ever had a time in life where you realized that you had crossed over into another level of maturity, and there a significant past was created? So for example, many of us, when we graduate high school, we begin to realize, wow, we're no longer children in the child sense. We've crossed a threshold. We've crossed some kind of a boundary. Well, that is what Saturn is in charge of. That's what Saturn rules in our charts. It represents how we are developing and the structures we're creating for ourselves at any given point in time that are more appropriate for where we are and where we're headed. Now, Saturn is a longer transiting planet. Whatever sign it touches, it stays there for about 2.5 years. Take a look. Take a look at last winter. All of us can take a look at last winter when Saturn moved into Sagittarius back in December of 2014. Take a look at some of the things in your life that began to become oppressive and heavy. Take a look at some of the things in your life that began to become more serious. I know for myself, in one area of my chart, it was the area regarding health concerns because my Saturn is in Sagittarius, which is the 6th house for me. So I recommend everybody go take a look at alabe.com when you get a moment. Find out what house Sagittarius lies in for you. I'm going to be covering some of that here, but just to get a deeper conversation on that, either contact me directly at Dexter Kendrick Soul on Facebook or Dexter Kendrick Soul on Instagram. I'm happy to chat with anybody who's interested. So let's take a look at what's going to be happening in our lives between now and December of 2017. And so historically, mythologically, Saturn was considered to be one of the Titans. He was the son of the sky god Uranus and the earth god goddess Gaia. And so at one point, to overthrow his father and take over the kingdom, he castrated his father by cutting off his father's genitals. His genitals fell into the ocean, and then, of course, out of a bubbling froth of his genitalia became the beautiful Venus. Venus was born that way, but that's a different story. Nonetheless, what Saturn represents is how we attempt to cut off those parts of ourselves that are no longer valid. How we begin to separate ourselves from those people and circumstances that we have outgrown. You cannot fill an already full vessel. And so whenever we get to any area of our life, and for some of us it'll be the area regarding our identity, for some of us it'll be the area regarding our personal income, resources, our self-esteem. For some of us it'll be our relationships with family members, the way we communicate with people on a daily basis. For others of us it'll be with regard to our home and family. The home that we create for ourselves, our real estate, our property. For others of us, it'll be our relationships and friendships. And so we'll touch on that a little bit too in this conversation. But wherever Saturn touches, first of all, it goes around and touches each of these areas in our chart once every 24 years. So you can go back 24 years ago and take a look at some of the serious matters that came into your life at that time. Let's see, 89, 90, 1991. 1991, I was in third grade. I remember all of a sudden life became really serious because I started getting homework to take home, and even had homework on the weekends. There were some other things going on in that area of my life at that time, but you can take a look at 1991 and see what was serious for you, what shifts you had to make, what thresholds you had to cross, and what became oppressive and heavy. Because life should, in the cyclical fashion that it goes, life should continue to get easier and easier every time a planet touches on the same sign. So now that Saturn is transiting through Sagittarius, it will mean significant things for a number of people. So as I said, Saturn represents how we are maturing in our life, how we can cross from one level of maturity to another level of maturity, higher consciousness and responsibility, and what we cannot take along with us. Sometimes we can't take loved ones and people with us to that higher threshold because they don't really understand where we're headed. Their mind is not maturing on the same wavelength that our mind is, and it's not a bad thing, it's an appropriate thing, but things begin to pass away. Just like Saturn castrated his father, we begin to castrate and cut out certain people and aspects and circumstances from our lives that are no longer valid for where we are today and for where we're headed. Many people will experience Saturn's transit as a painful transit, in the sense that there usually is some level of loss and letting go. There is usually some kind of loss of an idea or letting go of something that you held on to for a period of time because you were growing in that way for a period of time. But as Saturn transits this house, Sagittarius, or any house for that matter, what it begins to do is help you restructure your life for how you are mature now and where you're maturing to now. People will lose their jobs, people will lose loved ones, people will lose friendships, and so Saturn was seen in the ancient texts to be the greater malefic planet. So any sign that was touched by Saturn was said to have bad luck. Not so. It's not true. What is true is that any sign that is touched by Saturn must recognize their flaws, recognize the areas where they have tried to avoid maturing, and step up to the plate, because things will continue to break away, give way, and become overly oppressive before the person, so that the person can identify what needs to be changed and make those changes. When you begin to move in alignment with the direction life is headed in, things do not have to be painful. In fact, things can be quite positive and easy. I'll give you a little, this has been in every mythological story, all the way from Jonah, who, for those who are familiar with Christian texts, was told to go to Nineveh. And he said, I don't want to go to Nineveh. I don't want to go to Nineveh. And God in the Christian text said, that's your path. If you don't go to Nineveh, you will not do anything else. And so he was swallowed up by a whale until he was resigned himself to move in the path that life was trying to help him get to. And he ended up taking care of his business, because that was his business. He attempted to do something else, and life stopped for him. So if you find that you are being blocked in some area, if you are finding that over the next year or so, if you have found last winter even, that certain relationships began to give way, disintegrate, and just kind of fall even because they were weak, it's because they've already been weak. And now with Saturn there, they're going to be even more obvious. Their flaws and their fragility is going to be even more obvious as it begins to sway and break apart. Let's take a look. In the other myth, where Saturn is, he overthrows his father and becomes king of the world, he gets an oracle reading and finds out that one of his sons, will eventually overthrow him like he overthrew his father. So Saturn is seen to be the planet of karma, the cause and effect. Every action that we take has a reaction. We may not be met with it immediately, but it will come around to meet us, for better and worse. Not or, for better and worse. And so that conversation means that when he had each of his children with his wife Rhea, he swallowed them. He swallowed and ate each of his children. He cannibalized each of his children, and then, of course, in a ironic twist of fate, his son Zeus, which he swallowed, his wife, when he tried to swallow his son Zeus, instead gave him a bag, swaddling clothes of stones, so that he had an upset stomach, and he actually didn't swallow Zeus. Zeus opened up his father's stomach, freed his brothers and sisters. They went to war and overthrew Saturn. But nonetheless, the point is that whenever we're trying to give birth to something new, within ourselves. Whenever we're recognizing that life is moving us in a certain direction, we begin to experience a certain level of fear around the next movement. Saturn became fearful of the next movement of his progeny, or his children, overthrowing him. But that is the natural progression of life, that children become adults and take the place of the former adults who move on to be, exalted people with a history, etc., veterans, if you will. And so by trying to stop that, the only thing he did was slow down the process, but it was an inevitable process. And nonetheless, whenever we're trying to give birth to some creative issue of ours, maybe it's that we've always wanted to sing, maybe it's getting more responsible with our finances, maybe it's recollecting that we can forgive somebody who hurt us in the past. Whatever we attempt to swallow and not give birth to because we don't know how it will be received, life will end up stopping in that area. And that is where pain will show up. If a relationship has been breaking down for years because your partner is not communicating with you and you're the only one doing the talking, you'll notice that now your partner probably will stop talking to you altogether. That the breakdown becomes more obvious, more blatantly obvious. And it will happen in certain ways for each of the signs. Let's take a look at it. So for the fire signs, including Leo and Aries, of course Sagittarius is also a fire sign. For Sagittarius, it's going to represent over the next year and a half, because it's already about a half of a year in. For the next year and a half, for Sagittarius, it's the reconstruction of one's identity. Who are you? Not only who are you, but how do you see yourself? And what about those responsibilities that you need to take care of? Because Saturn is the ruler of the second house of income and resources. Capricorn is the sign that is the patron sign of, Saturn is the patron planet of Capricorn, and Capricorn rules the second house. That means Saturn is at home in your second house of income. So where have you perhaps been slacking off on becoming responsible when it comes to dollars and cents? Have you been planning for the future? Have you been taking a shrewd, unemotional look at, if I don't save $5 here and it's time for $5 to come up with some bill or necessity, how will I pay my bills? If you haven't taken a look at that, and if you haven't taken a look at what you feel like you deserve, do you deserve to be taken care of? Do you deserve to have security with regard to your self-esteem and your management of resources? Then Saturn is going to apply pressure here until you cannot ignore or sweep under the carpet that issue any longer. That's the essence of Saturn. Later on, the Christians will affectionately rename Saturn Satan because he does bring tests. He begins to push on that which is weak so that A, we can recognize what has been weak all along, and B, that we can strengthen it with newfound consciousness. If you remember in the Garden of Eden, when the serpent tempted Eve with the fruit, he awakened her consciousness. She all of a sudden became aware of her genitalia, which she previously had not been aware of. I perhaps believe that that is a story of a rite of passage from childhood into adulthood when we discover our sexuality. But I'll leave that at that point. For Leo, the fifth house. Where is my specialness coming into play? And where am I trying to swallow how I am special to me because I want to be accepted by other people? Saturn represents how we are held in the esteem of other people. It represents our reputation. And if I'm trying to connect from the heart space, because Saturn is currently traveling through the fifth house in your chart, which is the house of romance and gambles, risks, with regard to our emotions, and also, other types of gambling, but there's no bigger gamble than that which comes from sharing our heart with someone, correct? And so in that way, Saturn is going to be saying, where have I been stifling my own growth by not honoring who I truly am, and is being thirsty to fill a void, to fill this emptiness of this chamber, which is my heart, which actually is supposed to be empty. It's supposed to be open to receive and give. And it cannot be filled by another person. It must be filled by unique and authentic self-love. And that is what we share with other people. And that's what it's a renewable resource. We recycle self-love when we're relating to other people romantically. And so that's the lesson that's coming down the pipe for Leo. For Aries in the ninth house, the conversation is going to be, what is my path? What is my path? What defines me as a person? What are my personal philosophies on life? Not just those which are imposed upon me perhaps by authority figures or people who say that they love me, but what do I say about my life and the direction that it's headed? And how can I trust that? Because Saturn will represent fear. Remember, Saturn tried to swallow his progeny, his children, because he did not want to be overthrown. And so if we feel like we have to make decisions, Aries, that step outside of our comfort zone, where are we attempting to hide away from making those decisions, because they will take us away from our familiar? And so that's what you're going to be experiencing. And because it's a trine aspect, the most harmonious aspect, still going to teach you some lessons, but it means you're going to be running into them very easily. Very easily. It's going to be very habitual that you're finding, if you're a Leo, that you're finding that you're feeling like you're being thirsty for love. If you're Aries, that you're finding that you're constantly questioning, what's my next step? What's my path? Where am I headed? If you're a Sagittarius, that you're finding that God, life is just keeps sending me one more issue to deal with after another. It keeps getting heavier and heavier. But the truth is, Saturn rules the element of lead. And so what we have to do is take a look at what is becoming heavy and oppressive in our lives, because that is actually what's trying to leave our lives. And just like the scythe that is used at harvest time, it's time to make some changes. It's time to cut off something so that we can move to a higher level of consciousness. Very briefly, the mutable signs, Pisces, Geminis, Virgo. For Pisces, the 10th house of career. What is my calling, my vocation in life? What am I passionate about, and what would I do even if it did not cost me any money? Pisces, Saturn is giving you from now until 2017 a call to action. You are being called to explore and experiment with certain things in your life regarding your passions in life, whether they include money or not, and to see where it takes you, because life is attempting to help you. And so if you try to avoid those conversations, including conversations of taking on greater responsibility in that area, the area that enthuses you and brings you vitality in life, then you will find that you are blocked professionally. Period. Gemini, which will fall in the 7th house, because Sagittarius represents your 7th house of partnerships and marriage. You're going to find that even if you are in a relationship and in a marriage, you will have to confront your flaws about that relationship during this 2-year period. Sometimes best friend relationships disintegrate and dissolve. It's usually under a Saturn transit that the thing we think will never change is the first thing to go, because it has served its purpose. Not because it's outlived its purpose, but it has served its purpose. It's done its job, and now it's attempting to move on so that we can do a greater job. And nothing ever leaves our life without something better and bigger coming to replace it. Very quickly, Virgo, the 4th house. Over this next 1.5 years, your home life is going to be teaching you some extreme lessons about what it means to be responsible and make hard decisions where your family is concerned. You may not be liked by everybody regarding the decisions that you're making for you and your family's security, but your security is going to be at the heart of why things that may be too shaky begin to give way. And sometimes we have to lose something first or have a painful experience before we do that. But Pisces, Gemini, and Virgo, you are going to be pressed and pushed by circumstances and people to make necessary changes or step up to the plate. It's a square, 90-degree angle. It's irreconcilable differences. You won't be able to ignore it or sweep it under the carpet any longer. Air signs like Aquarius, which Saturn co-rules. Saturn is the patron planet of Capricorn and co-ruler of Aquarius, because when we first discovered planets, we could not see past Saturn, so we just assigned Saturn to Aquarius. Now we know it's Aquarius, Saturn rules Aquarius, and Uranus rules Aquarius together, because we now know of Uranus. But Aquarius and Libra, what is going to be happening? It's the potential for change. Life is going to be bringing you invitations to take the next step, but nothing is going to force you to do so. However, if you do not do so, you will find that your vitality for your work is diminishing. You will find that getting out of bed might be a little bit depressing every day. The melancholias may kick in, and some things begin to become really oppressive. For Aquarius, the 11th house, your friendships, the organizations and agencies that you're associated with, if you are no longer in alignment with their values, you are going to find that the work itself becomes extremely difficult to bear. And your friendships, you're going to be redefining what it means to be a friend, Aquarius. And this is the house that you rule. You're a natural ruler of the 11th house. So you already understand associations, the difference between an acquaintance and a friend. But life is saying, well, the last time we revisited this was in 91. This is what life is teaching you now. Libra, The third house, your relationships with loved ones, cousins, siblings, relatives, etc., the way you communicate with them, and also the way you communicate with people at large, the public at large, the immediate environment, co-workers, etc. This is how you are functioning today, these days, because you have a lot of things you want to get into order. You have some things that are coming down the pipe for you over the next 14 years, and you got to begin putting together tools so you can perhaps not have to do what you're continuing to do right now while you're setting up that process. There's an important movement coming for Libra in 2017, but for right now, it's all about designing how we are being in life, how we are wording our life, and some people won't like that because you're going to be very no-nonsense, and you're going to have a plan and an agenda, and people will take it or leave it. But that is the essence of Saturn. Like I said, Saturn castrated his father. He was very shrewd. It had nothing to do with emotions. His mom said, this is what you need to do to secure your future. He did it. And then when he found out the same thing was going to happen to him, because that's the natural progression of life, he attempted to swallow his creative issue. We each will have to acknowledge between now and 2017, and we're going to have this conversation multiple times because Saturn's going to be doing a lot of things in our charts. But we're going to have to find out between now and 2017 what matters to us, what matters now, what are our priorities, and let's roll up our sleeves and get busy. All right, so please like, share, subscribe, Dexter Kendrick Soul. This was my pleasure speaking to you. I will definitely be back with some more conversations. Next week, Pluto, the god of the underworld, goes direct in Capricorn. We have a lunar eclipse coming up in Aries. Where is the time, all right? All right, so this is lifetime, not clock time. Thank you so much for joining me. I will see you soon.